We like to describe our report as a carefully edited collection of U.S. news headlines, papers across the country, summarized for you in one place. We do it here every day. Here's our top story. It is polls aplenty this morning, with the national newspapers all releasing results of their latest public opinion surveys. 1 month into the Obama administration, the Washington Post provides an interesting report card. Most Americans support the economic stimulus package, but Republican support for President Obama has already faded. The New York Times CBS poll finds optimism and confidence for Barack Obama, and Republican politicians are getting the blame for handling of the stimulus package. USA Today has a poll concluding Americans support new spending to help individuals, and 3 out of 4 Americans surveyed said what they want most to hear from the president in his speech tonight is his outlook on the economy. Back to the Washington Post for the latest on the nationalization of banks. The Post says Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner wants to avoid an explicit takeover that would put the government in charge of running banks, but some senior officials say as a last resort they would consider taking temporary control. J.P. Morgan Chase is supposed to be the bank that's on good footing. The Wall Street Journal, among the papers reporting that bank, is slashing its dividend to try to ensure that it remains relatively strong. The dividend was 38 cents. It is now down to just a nickel. The Journal says investors did not expect such a deep cut. There's a story in the Personal Journal section about the problems that the jumbo mortgage threshold causes in places where homes are more expensive. Before the mortgage meltdown, if your loan was classified as jumbo, you typically paid 0.3 of a point more than a regular loan. Now that premium has jumped to 1.5 percentage points. To Cuba, it has been a busy year since Raul Castro took over the government from his brother. A busy first year, says the Miami Herald, with a front page story featuring some of his global moments. Recent meetings at the presidential palace in Algiers and with the president of Namibia in Havana. The Philadelphia Inquirer with news from Iraq. The restored National Museum reopened yesterday. Nearly 6 years after looters carried away priceless antiquities, the ransacking of the museum in view of U.S. troops became a symbol for critics of Washington's post-invasion strategy. The federal government wants you to get married. At least it's federal funding behind a $5 million media campaign that will extol the virtues of marriage for 18 to 30-year-olds. The Chicago Sun-Times story quotes one marriage expert who says the message really isn't just get married, it's don't underestimate the benefits of marriage. Those benefits, he says, can include better health, more wealth, and happiness. Check out the morphing machine in the Oklahoman this morning. Students at Redlands Community College in Oklahoma have set up a photo booth that marks Black History Month with a computer that takes your picture, then immediately shows you what you would look like with characteristics of 5 other races. An interesting feature in the LA Times about Mount Negro Head in Malibu. The mountain was named in the 1880s for black pioneer John Ballard. Now some neighbors are pushing to have the mountain renamed for the man it's already named after. They think a more fitting tribute to the freed Kansas slave would be to have the mountain called Ballard Mountain. Also from LA is David Beckham's time in the U.S. winding down. The soccer star was loaned by the LA Galaxy to AC Milan in the offseason. He says he has rediscovered himself as the player with his time in Europe. The Times says if he transfers permanently to Milan, he will have left only a modest imprint on the American soccer landscape. Men and women react differently to beauty. As reported today in the Boston Herald, men process beauty on the right side of their brains. Women use the entire brain. Researchers found when women consider a visual object, they link it immediately to language, while men concentrate on the spatial aspects of the object. The plastic bag seems to be living another day thanks to a downturn in the economy. The New York Times reports on the loss of momentum in the movement to ban or at least reduce the use of plastic bags at stores around the country. There have been a lot of cities and states with bag bans in the works, but now that movement has slowed down with the realization that plastic bag fees might not be so politically popular right now. Also from the New York Times Health News, you've got the 4 R's at school. Reading, writing, arithmetic, of course. And recess. Experts say students who have a regular recess of at least 15 minutes during the school day do better in school than those who don't. Some nice photos from Mardi Gras in the Louisiana papers today, seen here in The Advocate. 8 parades are scheduled in New Orleans today. The New York Daily News has some the day after the Oscars coverage. 2 pages of photos from some of the events in Hollywood 2 nights ago, including a funny shot of Jessica Biel trying to get past a doorman at the Vanity Fair party. And the Snuggie is on page 2 of this newspaper. The seen-on-TV blanket has become enough of a silly pop culture phenomenon that some guys in Chicago have come up with a plan for a big pub crawl where everyone has to wear a Snuggie. Thankfully, the whole appeal of the Snuggie is that it's a blanket with armholes, so drinking on that pub crawl will be unimpeded. We invite you to come back every day to get all the top news from U.S. newspapers at patspapers.com. On our website, you'll find links to all the stories that I've featured today.